So we have a face fillet option here as well, and this is going to be similar to the constant radius in terms of the processing behind it. The face fillet will probably have a better chance of succeeding when you're dealing with some complex surfaces. But basically, the procedure, you just click the faces you want to blend together, and then you will get a preview as long as you have the full preview turned on. And you can see the fillet here actually is pretty close to that constant radius fillet, and probably for all intensive purposes are identical. And like I said, it's really just the computing behind it that will determine, you know, the final shape of this. The full round fillet isn't going to apply here. Basically, if you have 3 different faces, you'll be able to select them all, and it'll blend a full radius between all of those. One thing I want to show you real quick before we go any farther is the curvature of these fillets. Now, a fillet by nature is constant radius, and you have to understand that when you try to apply these to complex surfaces, because they don't take on the surrounding curvature. So you can see here there's no gradual blend between these two, and when you're dealing with you know, these complex surfaces, Class A surfaces, if you want to get that detailed, you really want to be aware of what you're doing when you start applying these fillets. If we turn this curvature off, you know, this looks really nice, but when you start to rotate it around to see the light, let's see if we can get a good representation here. Alright, so you can see the light is actually broken up from these different panels, and that's because the curvature doesn't blend nicely with the surrounding surfaces. There is a way to do that though. Let me go ahead and just delete that knit, and I'm going to create a few planes. You don't have to do this with planes. You can do it with you know, sketches or other surfaces to trim things away. The planes work out really nice because we have this top mid plane here, and I know the mid plane of our body actually falls on that. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is make an offset plane. I'm going to make this one meters. Okay, that, and do another one in the opposite direction. It's going to have to be a little bit smaller, maybe 20 millimeters, and let's see how those look. Let's look at this from the side real quick. Alright, so if we zoom in, you see we created this 40 millimeter offset plane up here and this 20 down here. And what we're going to do is we're going to use these planes to trim away this corner, this intersection here. So trim tool is this plane, and over here I'm going to remove these parts here that I'm concerned with. And I don't need to remove the front part here. I'm not doing anything with that. There's no surface below it. So I do that. I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom and remove these areas here that we want to deal with. Alright. One other thing is, I don't remember if I pointed out or not, but G on the keyboard is a magnifying glass. And you can change these hotkeys, but it'll allow you to zoom in and zoom out of a small area rather than rotating and moving the whole model. So if you're ever getting in a situation like this where you're messing with the model, you can't really see what's going on here, you can zoom in to change the selection, and it might speed things up depending on how you like to work and what kind of model you're dealing with. That may or may not help you. But that is always there in the sketch and the model and the assembly and all those different features. Now it can get a little jumpy. If you get zoomed in real far and you start moving this cursor over, it's very easy to lose your space. So I recommend, you know, you zoom in, or you know, you get close to where you want on, and then don't move the mouse around too much, because it's going to be very easy for you to lose your spot. Alright. So what I want to show you here is, let's actually do a boundary surface, and the first thing I'm going to do is right click using the selection manager. I'm going to select these 3 edges and hit OK, and again selection manager, and I'm going to select these 2. Alright, the first thing you'll notice the dots on the end, they're reversed. I selected these top lines from right to left and these bottom from left to right, and what that did was it actually caused the surface, trying to build the surface, but it's actually crossing because it thinks I want to start this edge here. You can drag these around and move things. I recommend that you just right click over here and you do flip connectors, and it'll make your life a little bit easier. Now we have an interesting situation here. The majority of this edge is actually straight. And of course I threw up an error because I actually clicked on something. But the majority of this edge here is straight. Then we start to introduce some curvature here. Same thing with the bottom. It's straight for a good portion of this here. And then we start to introduce this geometry. So if I come in here and I try to apply curvature to face, you can see it has a lot of trouble actually trying to match that entire section. I'm going to go ahead and do it on both of them. And you can see the surface that we get is certainly not ideal. This is not what we want. It's trying really, really hard to create the surface, and part of the problem is actually going to be this weight number. I'm going to kick this down, and let's see what we can get out of it. Alright, kicking it way down certainly helps. You can still see there's some funny, curvature happening right here in the center, and this is really, really not what we want. We could okay this and we could look at the surface. If it does, no, it's going to intersect itself. But if it was able to build this, you're certainly not going to want this as your surface. It's not a replacement for a fillet. So what I'm going to do, I know these two lines here, because we created this split on that top surface, these two lines are the same length. I'm just going to select those two, apply that curvature to face relation, and look at what we have here. Alright, so let me just look at this from the back. It'll probably be easier. Alright, so this is what it's trying to do. It's matching the curvature here and here, and if you actually look at the combs, not necessarily what we want. Well, one thing you can do is you can come back in here and you can play with these numbers and drive this a little bit better. And it's looking better. It's probably not exactly what we want. So what I'm going to do is come back on this tail plane, and I'm just going to sketch a spline snapping to that point and that point. And what I want to do is I'm going to apply the equal curvature to both of these and see what it looks like. Let's show curvature. Alright. Alright, so that looks a little bit... it's a nicer blend there. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to leave that. Let's turn the curvature off. I'm going to leave that and give this a shot. So I'm going to do boundary surface again. I'm going to use that new sketch there as direction 1, and I'm going to go between these two as direction 2. I'm going to apply that curvature to face relation again. Alright, but you can see now the curvature combs at each of these sections are actually driven by that initial sketch there. So the end result is going to be a little bit more consistent. I'm going to go ahead and OK that. Let me look here and turn the curvature relation on. Now, if you actually zoom into this, it should instantly look very different from that fillet that we applied. You can see here it blends to this surface, and it blends to this surface down here, and it's a nice gradual transition. And that's what you want, because when you get light, you get reflections going across these three surfaces, you don't want a jump between those two. You want it to be a really nice transition. Now if you turn this off and you just look at it from the side, at first glance it might not look any different than just a normal fillet. But if you actually sit here and you look at the way the light transitions across these, you can tell that The light is the same up here, and it's a gradual transition down to the bottom, and that's really what you're going to look for. And these will become